Hey, it's me, Uncle Ricky. How you doing? Welcome to another episode of Uncle Ricky's House. Look, it's Black History Month. Hmm. You know, it's a shame. Black people make history every day. But because some people want to perpetuate the myth that we need help in all things, including our recognition as a people, we need a special month. Well, anyway, look, because it is Black History Month, we might as well talk about some Black History things. And, of course, the struggle, you know, from the 1619 mode to the 2024 mode, all things Black accomplishments, how we got them, where we at, and some things that maybe we kind of exceeded. Well, for one thing, there is nothing that has the precursor Black with it that isn't intertwined in the history of this country. In other words, how this country evolved. Sometimes we were the leaders in some things, and sometimes, a lot of times, we were just, as a people, we were just the brunt of the joke, because that is the mentality that was generated before, during, and after the Civil War. Mentality that even today is seeming to have, a resurgence, a revitalization, where it's, it's okay to say the N-word and hurl it at a black person. It's okay to say, be an elected representative of the United States and publicly say that black people are lazy or brown people are lazy, or that the Indians gave up, just stupid shit. But Black history, everything is intertwined, and one of the things that we exceed in today is sports, specifically the NFL. Now, there's another name that's given to the NFL, and it's not national, but there is a majority. The majority of the players in the NFL are non-white, but and the entertainment value of the NFL, even though there are some outstanding white players, and some of them aren't even quarterbacks. But the NFL for years has revolved around the money value of black stars. I'm not saying that everything in NFL is based on black players, but black players are responsible for a lot. Now, even the NFL has had to deal with America's social problem with equality, and pro football is no exception. Professional sports in the United States are a microcosm of American society. So why shouldn't they be susceptible to the same ills that the people that occupy that special space known as professional football grew up in or were created in the petri dish called the United States? But we have a plethora now of black quarterbacks. There's 32 teams in the league, and 16 of the teams have a black quarterback now. And a lot of people don't realize the struggle that mirrors the black struggle in America that occurred in the National Football League. A lot of people don't remember or too young to remember, and will never ever be taught the points of segregation and Jim Crow. And those points, those very same social ills that were generated by law at one time were practiced in the NFL. President John F. Kennedy had to tell the owner of the Washington Redskins in, I think, 1962, that if you don't start to hire black players, because the Redskins were the last professional football team to hire a black player, Kennedy said, I'm going to cancel the lease on City Stadium. George Preston Marshall was the owner of the Washington Redskins. He was also a vocal racist, segregationist, whatever you want to call it. And he didn't believe that black people had any business playing football with white people. In 1932, post-depression and all this, jobs were hard to come. George Preston Marshall rigged and got the NFL, the then NFL, to actually put a black ban on professional football. In other words, no blacks could be hired in professional football. That ban lasted, I think, until later in the 30s. I think it was like 36 or so. And the ban got lifted, and a couple, black players were contracted for NFL teams. But there was always a push not to have black quarterbacks. It took a while to actually get blacks on the professional level, to get blacks into the backfield and then quarterback. And believe it or not, with as many black players in the NFL, every team hadn't ever started a black quarterback until I think it was like 2014. The New York, believe it or not, the New York Giants were the last team in the NFL to start a black quarterback for the first time. When it was the old AFL NFL thing, the AFL was far ahead of the NFL in its acceptance of black quarterbacks. When it merged and became one NFL with AFC, NFC, the AFC still was far ahead, actually starting a black quarterback. I think the guy's name was Marlon Briscoe. But this story is about one player, and it's not at the professional level, because when he had the opportunity to become a professional, that was when the Cat Marshall had rigged the black player ban. So something else happened to him. We'll get to that at the end of this. All right, let's talk about Wilmeth Sadat Singh. And I know it's like, name doesn't sound like it should be part of American Black history, and it just goes to prove what's in the name. He was actually, the cat was 100% American, born back in Washington, D.C., I think around 1913, somewhere around there. And his dad died. His mom had a relationship with an Indian medical student. They got married. The guy did the right thing. He adopted all of her children from the previous marriage, and that's how Wilmeth got the name Sadat Singh, and that would affect his life later. They lived in Harlem, New York, and Wilmeth was, I guess, an athletic superstar. Basketball was his specialty. He got involved with teams that won several city championships, and as a result, he got a scholarship to Syracuse University in the 30s. Now, while he was there playing basketball on a scholarship, you got to understand Syracuse has a bit of a history about promoting outstanding black athletes, especially football players. Donovan McNabb went there, Jim Brown went there, John Mackey went there, and quite a few more. Now, Singh had a scholarship to play basketball. While he was there, just basically messing around like all college students do, he was playing a pickup game of football. And the lacrosse coach, now Syracuse lacrosse back in the day was famous. Jim Brown was part of a championship lacrosse team. He was also part of, just like Sadat Singh, he was part of the basketball team and an outstanding player, but he left because he said that he was tired of the racial slurs he had to endure from the players and the coaches involved in Syracuse basketball. But he still remained a football standout as a running back. One of the best running backs in the nation on the collegiate level. One of the best running backs he became one of the best running backs in the history of the NFL on the professional level. But that's another Syracuse story. But back to Wilmeth. Wilmeth, the cross coach put Wilmeth on the football team, or suggested that the football team should get Wilmeth. Wilmeth wound up being the first listed black quarterback. Now, you got to understand something. The quarterback position was just starting to evolve into what we know as the quarterback today. The forward pass was just starting to become a thing. Wilmeth was already an exceptional runner, but he also had an arm. Wilmeth was the first black person in the history of collegiate football to be listed as the team's starting quarterback. Now, this was the age of segregation. Segregation was still illegal then. Segregation was starting to fade into the north, where Syracuse was to a certain extent. But in the south, where Syracuse had to play games against opposing colleges, it was accepted and in the law in a lot, and actually the law in a lot of places. Now, in Baltimore, which was in Maryland, the segregation was the thing. The Baltimore Sun, a popular, or actually one of the major Afro-American newspapers back in the day, published a story about black players being accepted on major northern college teams, and also the rise in popularity of black players actually being in backfield positions, and the one quarterback, Wilmeth Sadat Singh. Not intentionally, but as part of the story, they exposed the fact that Wilmeth was not actually Hindu, that it was his adopted name because of his stepfather. The University of Maryland, when Syracuse was scheduled to play them, said, look, we're not going to play this game in Maryland if you still got basically an N-word as your starting quarterback, because it violates Maryland law. You can't play sports. We don't play mixed sports in Maryland, and the venue where the game is segregated. Black people are not allowed to come in as customers in the venue. They can clean up trash, but they can't pay to get in because it's segregated. Syracuse didn't fold, but they didn't hold it against Singh. He still remained the starting quarterback. It's just that they didn't play in that game. Syracuse lost that game. I think Maryland beat them 13-0. Now, you can say that karma is B or whatever. Of course, the story made national headlines, and the question, it did start the question about, the integration of sports in the United States. Was it a good thing? Was it a bad thing? And could we make it work? Of course, that the South held out until the late 50s and 60s when Bear Bryant, Alabama, played USC, and they got trounced because of the proliferation of black players in starting positions, mind you, not quarterback, for USC. And Bear Bryant said, gee, I got to get me some of those. But back to Sadat Singh. He remained the quarterback for Syracuse. The next year, Maryland had to come to New York to play. New York didn't have all those segregationist laws. Maryland couldn't complain about who the starting quarterback was. Maryland came to Syracuse, and Syracuse beat them something like 56-13 with Sadat Singh at the position of quarterback. Of course, I mean, we know there's always been a knock, same stereotypes in regular society were, I guess, improved or made to fit the narrative of the professional football players. Black players are not intelligent enough. Black players are more runners than tacticians, or more run. They can't pass accurately, and this is the stereotype that we've been given. And there's been cases where it may seem to be true, but it also applies to some major white quarterbacks. I mean, how the hell did Tim Tebow ever become a professional quarterback in the NFL? But the thing is, Sadat Singh blew all of those stereotypes out the window. He was a prolific passer. He could run when he had to run, but he understood the game of football, even though football was not his game of choice. Now, when he graduated, when his white teammates were thinking about trying to get pro contracts, because the pay in professional football was a great, attracting factor, especially with America coming out of the Great Depression. But Marshall, the owner of the Washington Redskins, had a black ban on football, so football had to become, a closed chapter of history for Wilmeth Sadat Singh. He went back to D.C. and joined the Washington, D.C. Metropolitan Police Force and had a short but outstanding career there. Now, what happened, even though the ban was lifted in 1936, other things were happening. He was still a policeman in D.C., and then the war broke out in 1941. Sadat Singh enlisted in the United States Army Aircorp, volunteered for the Muskogee Air Men program to be trained as a pilot. Now, here we are, we have a person that shattered the color barrier in collegiate football as far as the position of quarterback. Then he takes a job as a Metropolitan D.C. police officer. Then he enlists to serve in the first black pilot training program ever in the history of the United States military. It sounds like the building of a Captain America legend, but unfortunately in May of 1943, Sadat Singh died in a tragic training accident when the engine of his plane quit on a training mission over Lake Huron. Singh attempted to bail out, but he got tangled on the fuselage of his plane, and when the plane crashed into Lake Huron, it dragged Sadat Singh to the bottom and he drowned. That is one of the stories of a true, ceiling crasher, and sometimes it gets buried by the successes of, let's say, more recent, memorable people. But the story should be honored because it is and always will be an intricate part of American Black history. And with that, this is Uncle Ricky saying peace out and God bless. I'll see you again at Uncle Ricky's house.